Maybe a little
We're
bit.
live. Hello, world. Welcome. This is the Culture Clinic show where we help HR leaders shape a culture where people to work. My name is Joe. I'm the co-founder here at Gusto. I've been working very closely with people culture leaders, HR leaders for about 10 years now, helping them shape great culture through employee recognition programs. And I'm here with my colleague, one of my favorites, Kwesi Thomas, a legend of Total Rewards. Here to chat a fun topic. Kwesi, maybe give the crew a quick hello and introduction.
Hi, everyone. As Joe said, I'm Kwesi Thomas. I've been in HR for going on 22-ish years now, and had the pleasure of working in some cool companies. Nortel way back when I started, then went to BlackBerry, brief stint at Manulife, and then Shopify. And then for the past 7 years, I've been helping small and medium companies and a couple large ones as well build on their rewards and the recognition programs and really helping them in their growth journey. I really like helping companies grow, and so happy to talk today with you guys about recognition programs.
Yeah, Kwesi has a wealth of knowledge working closely with companies building out those recognition programs. So I think this is a really great topic for today. So before we actually jump into the topic, anyone who's joining us, this is an Ask Us Anything format. So if you do have questions for Kwesi or myself, but mainly for Kwesi, and it can be related to today's topic, but it can also be related to anything people and culture related, total rewards, recognition, best practices. If you've got questions, please chime in. But to kind of kick things off, topic for today is how to start small with recognition. Okay. And so we actually had a few questions come in already in advance of today's session, but I just kind of want to kick things off, Kwesi, with, a bit of an opener. So in your mind, what does it mean to start small with recognition, and why is this a good strategy for some companies?
Yeah, I mean, for me, starting small means start with a recognition program that you have the ability to achieve the results you're looking for on. So you've got the right budget, you've got the right communication support, you've got the right platform, you've got all the necessary elements to start a program, and not just launch it and have the big bang of launching, but also have the ability to support it and really drive the adoption. So sometimes that is starting across the company, but maybe with a subset of managers, could be starting in some area of the company, but it's starting a program that you can achieve the results you're driving at. You're not stretching, an element of the program, whether it's the people, the budget, et cetera. You can really achieve your results.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and totally. And, something we see, I'd say a big mistake is there can be this decision that a company needs to sort of launch a big recognition program. And so once they make that decision, they might spend a whole year trying to craft up the perfect program. And, again, maybe they launched that program in a year's time, and maybe they've made some mistakes with sort of program design. And they realize that there's a whole year wasted building a program that wasn't kind of right for them. Have you ever seen this? And maybe you want to just add some commentary or comments into that?
I've done it. Far less seen it. I've done it.
Yeah.
When it was at BlackBerry, we launched a recognition program. I'd actually just been moved into the title Manager Recognition Program, and it partnered with a vendor. And we spent, I'll give you an example. We spent weeks and weeks with name and brand and trying to figure out what the look and the colors of this brand would be, and just to name the program, forget everything else. Then we spent months and months trying to figure out a wizard to help people figure out if to give $5, if to give $50. Then we spent, umpteen amounts of time just trying to build out this program. So when we launched it, we had to tweak and change, a dozen of times to get it right. And so I think we took almost 9 months, 10 months to launch the program. Mm-hmm. And I think if I'd go back and do it again, I would spend a lot less time doing that and spending a lot more of those resources and the dollars, especially the dollars, in preparing for the adoption and for getting people to use the program and actually trying to make it meaningful and knowing that we could change the things in the program pretty easily.
Yeah. A couple of things come to mind as well for me. Some of our most successful clients really take this sort of crawl, walk, run approach. And so rather than spending a year building out the program that may not work, like be quick. And so some of the benefits to this are that, one, you can actually start creating a positive impact like right away, like in a few weeks or a month. So rather than trying to build the program for a year and launching next year, like positive impact immediately. The other thing I want to touch on is it can be much faster to get budgets approved, right? Like rather than pitching the giant program and having to wait for the next budgeting cycle, and maybe it goes through, maybe not. We've actually seen clients who have found success in finding budgets that already exist. So maybe leaders and managers are spending money on lunches for their team or buying some gift cards on the side and doing things a little bit ad hoc. So there could be some quick wins by finding those budgets and kind of like moving it into a program that has a bit of a framework. Any thoughts on that?
I would agree with you. I've helped a few programs where there are some existing budgets that may not be titled recognition, but sometimes if you've got a large call center, because you're a large insurance company or those types of places, they've got budgets to actually do some of these things, called recognition or not, that can be put towards this, where there is the ability to move fast and gives the ability to, recognize and reward people for hitting metrics and doing things that they needed to do in those groups. And so, yeah, there's usually some ways to get these programs running really quickly, especially if there's already a need or people are already doing this in ad hoc ways. And I think for me, that the return on moving quickly and adjusting and learning is much better than the year, 6 months, whatever it is, to come up with the perfect program that will never be perfect when you launch it.
Yeah. And the other thing, it's a great way to prove to senior leaders that recognition works, right? And then you can come back with the big budget request at the next, budgeting cycle.
Correct.
And, one other thing too that comes to mind is every company is at a different phase of their recognition journey. So I think of starting small in a few ways. Like you can start as a company, maybe you're not really doing any recognition. So you can start small with either a pilot program, which we might get into, or maybe sort of like parse off one small program. But then you could be later stage in your recognition journey, and maybe you have a number of programs going, but thinking about expanding that program. For example, maybe you want to launch a peer-to-peer program. Do you think it's a good idea for that company who, is sort of like has some maturity around recognition to then pilot the expansion? Or if you're far enough along in the recognition journey, do you think it's safe to just kind of like expand into peer-to-peer, for example?
Yeah, I've always gonna say it's better to test before you go and launch it for everyone. It's for me, whether that test is pretty broad or it's narrow. For me, you want to see some success in these programs or some sort of indication that they will be successful before going out there and doing the company-wide big launch, big emails, etc. And so my advice will always be, pilot it or expand it within a reasonable group and then keep growing the program rather than trying to do, all at once. Especially when jumping into peer-to-peer or something that's company-wide. It's very hard to change those. The big ships, once they're sailing, it takes a lot to change those directions. And so for those, we want to make sure we have a good idea what we're doing before we start going, okay, everyone, this is what you now do, and this is how you now do it. Let's make sure we have some of those things right before we do that. An example for me was we had in one of the programs, in the BlackBerry one actually, we had manager approvals all messed up in that program when we started it. We were having people, 2-3 layers of approval for $50 reward, and so you're going, this has to be approved by a VP because it's $50, and that killed the program. It was a snail's pace, right? Because the approvals just weren't happening fast enough. And so if we go back and say, hey, if we piloted that, we would have seen that, fixed that issue, and then gone out to the broader group with the program the way we want it to run.
Yeah, we've seen that mistake as well. Like over approvals can kill the program, and like usually there's a deeper reason around that. There's some lack of trust, right? Like at some point you got to trust your people, and So yeah, that's great comment. So I actually have an interesting question to kind of like roll off of this a little bit. We often get the question, like, where should we start? For example, if we're a company that has no real framework around recognition, like, should I be starting with a milestone anniversary award program, or should I be starting with a top-down recognition program? Both of those programs are very sort of like pillars of recognition. Any thoughts around where a company might want to start?
So assuming you don't have the ability to do both milestone and top down on day one, right? My advice would be to go to top down before I do the milestone program. Milestone programs are likely easier to set up and get going. To be very frank, there's probably a little less work in getting them going. So that's attractive to, I think, a lot of us HR leaders, because we can do that quickly and put it out there. But I do think the ability to really kick off that recognition culture and building that habit for your managers and your leaders, having that recognition, tool in their tool belt, is more meaningful. I think people don't leave milestone programs, they leave managers, and so you want to give your managers a way to really interact with their employees. I think that would be more meaningful to me. I think that also has the ability to expand much more quickly than the milestone program, which is going to impact 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10% of your population in the year. Whereas in recognition top down has the ability to affect a large portion of your employees and really make an impact on your culture.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I mean, there's still something like 70% of people leave their managers, right? They're not going to stick around because they've got their 5-year anniversary coming up next year, but
Right.
They'll definitely leave a toxic manager or a manager that's not doing a great job at showing appreciation. So
Yeah.
Absolutely agree. If you had to pick between a milestone anniversary and a top-down program to get started, nailing your top-down program is your highest leverage opportunity because they have line of sight into your individual contributors, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we actually have a question here. This one's in from Bernadette. So thank you, Bernadette. Okay, so Quace, what goes into creating a good pilot program for recognition?
Goes into create a good program. I'm gonna start, sort of second step and come backwards. One, making sure you have the ability to reach, train, support your managers in the program. To me, that's where most programs fail, is in the actual adoption and the managers actually using the program and finding value in doing so. And so for me, if you're going to do a good pilot program, let's make sure that the people that you're going to work with are going to be on board, participate. You can support them, you can talk to them often, and do all of that, the good stuff, right? I'd probably say that about a full-blown program as well. But even when you're piloting it, the success of that pilot's going to really depend on the leaders using this program. All right. The second for me would be not to over-engineer the program. I'd want it fairly simple. I'd want to make sure that the people who are using the program can do so quickly. They understand what they're using, and it has real return on them. Right. The next one for me would be measurable. If you can't measure what you're doing in this program, then it's going to be a hard time going from pilot to the next phase. So make sure you've got some sort of goal that you want to hit and then measure. If I were to think of examples in my own career in this one, I've done it wrong a bunch of times, and so that's been easy to say. But I think where we got it right, we did a couple of programs that were less broad. There were more for specific teams, where we piloted with particularly the sales and marketing team because they had some activity we wanted to support, and we built I would say a faster recognition program. It was pretty set. It was one level, one award, and we created it and got the ability for managers to approve it quickly. That program took off really well because it was simple. People know what they were supposed to do. They knew how to use it. We were able to help them do so really quickly, and we were able to measure that we were actually getting results there.
Mm-hmm. So I understand the benefits of piloting a program.
Right.
And I also understand sort of like the benefits of piloting with a cohort of people, like sales and marketing in your example.
Right.
As companies are more and more aware of things being equitable across the organization, how do you kind of like tackle that? Because a lot of times companies don't want to be seen as sort of like, hey, the marketing department gets to run a recognition program and nobody else gets to run one, at least for a little while. Like how might you approach that? Just any thoughts around kind of like the equitability piece?
Yeah, if there's a natural reason for it, like natural demand that happens, then that's much easier, of course, because they've had something that's happening that requires it. I think the second part is really working that through with your leaders. I think if your leaders understand Like for me, I wouldn't pilot and just show up in marketing one day and have a program for them. The leadership team, which hopefully comprises the other leaders, would understand we're piloting into marketing and that we are going to be rolling out to other teams so that we've set the expectations. I know that's not easy, and no one likes to sit around those conversations as HR leaders and have those conversations. But to me, um, kind of diluting or spreading ourselves too thin on day one and having the program fail is worse to me than having this sort of the uneasy, equitable conversations about which team or which leaders levels or which regions are getting what. I think it's, setting the expectation that this is a pilot and the reason we're piloting it so we can build it out for a larger rollout in X months or whatever it is for the rest of the team. It's communication more than anything else, but I do know it's a challenge. And that's not just for recognition. Any program we roll out as HR leaders, we have this challenge with, right? You've got to, everyone wants what the other one has in these programs. But sometimes, to get them right, you do have to do them smaller first.
Yeah. That's good insight. So we actually have a question that came in here, Quay. So this is from Shazia, and I hope I pronounced that properly. Can you please share some examples of top-down recognition programs, how to manage the budget and fairness, because some managers can be more generous than others?
Gotcha. So make sure I'm reading it so I can answer properly. For example, of top-down recognitions, we're really speaking about a program that is a program that we've given a budget and the ability to managers at some levels, it doesn't mean at all levels, to be able to recognize the people within their team or across other teams for achieving results, right? And that definition can vary for many companies, but in that top-down program, managers are the one doing the recognizing. They're the ones giving out the recognition to people, and that's why we're calling it top-down. There are programs out there where employees can recommend each other to managers for awards. But I'd say for what we're answering right now, we're talking about managers recognizing employees for achieving something. That's the programs we're referring to. In terms of managing the budget, this is hard. This is a hard one because there will be managers who are further along in their recognition journey. I like that term. Who are going to be much more comfortable recognizing people at a faster clip, and they'll use up their budget and they'll want to do it more of it. I think for me, the only comeback to this is to continue to work with your other leaders who are not at that point in their recognition journey to get further along, because you want them recognizing people for achieving. You do want to monitor that the managers who are doing it often aren't abusing it, but I've rarely seen that as the case. That is an exception, not a very minute exception that I would not be worried about in the forefront. But I would be saying I spend a lot of time with the managers who are not recognizing, encouraging them to do so, bringing this part. Joe, I'd probably ask you to talk about this. It's forcing functions. Once I'm finished, definitely talk about that because I know you have a way of describing that. But supporting your managers through that journey to get to the point where they're recognizing people is the best way to have the budget used in a fair way. There are ways you can do job aids and guides and show people examples and create tools, answer A, B, C, and it tells you a recommendation what to give. There are lots of creative ways to support that journey and being more comfortable recognizing people. But I think no matter which way you do it, you have to help your managers get there.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that, Shazia, appreciate the question. Thinking about our most successful customers or clients, they are really just building a simple framework for managers to follow and then creating some accountability for managers. So Kwesi touched on recognition for performance. That's definitely part of it, but it can also be recognition tied to your core values or key behaviors that are important to you. But the important thing is just defining the why. Why should you as a manager give recognition? And just trying to be really, really clear with those managers. These are the reasons that are important to us. And then once they know why, you're being very clear around how much they can spend. So Quay's talked a little bit about this can be a challenge, but one thing that you can do is just allocate all managers at a specific level, a budget that resets after some period of time. So for example, all of our managers are going to get a $250 budget that will reset at the end of the quarter. So if they use it all, that's great. And if they don't, they kind of lose it or use it, or use it or lose it, and it resets. And so that can really help with the fairness piece. Again, there's going to be some managers that blast through that $250, and then there's going to be those managers that don't use it. And so again, just to piggyback on Kwesi, one of the important things here is data, using data to help coach those managers that are not sort of doing a good enough job. Recognition is a skill that can be improved. And so as long as you're having open dialogue and conversations with those managers that need help, it's gonna help them get better.
Awesome. I like that.
Yeah, cool. Again, thank you for that. Okay, let's keep moving here. So we've got a question here, Quace, from Xavier. At what point should you think about scaling up? What sort of results can you look for to convince leadership to let you take things to the next level?
I want to use the word scaling up as in I need more budget. I want to do more, right? And for me, that would be a couple of things. I'd be looking for high engagement and high participation and results that are at least a quarter of good, sustainable results that are going up. Not a peak and then a valley. I want to see consistent results. I'd love to see the budgets being used, right? That's not the only indication, but for me, if I'm going to ask for more budget or to expand a program, it's because we are exhausting our resources available to us. And so for me, I'd like to see budget usage that's north of 80%. I can, you can say that could be 90, that could be a 70 for someone. But anything lower than that, I think you get that to the point where why are you asking for more? You have lots of budget, right? That's not being used. And so I'd want to see high usage of the budget and going to asking for more for the program. And then there would be a number of, I would say, other metrics that I want to see moving in the right direction. So manager participation, the frequency of the awards, some of the your metrics around engagement and your recognition scores, all those things you want to see them moving in the right direction. And so those are important. And then for me, a large part of it would be I'd want to see the stories, the managers asking for the programs, the other people in the departments hearing about it. I want to see people asking to use the program for other things. Hey, I've got something I need to achieve in the call center this month. Can I use recognition to push that forward this month? Those types of things. I want to see that also happening. And I think I have a strong case to expand the program at that point.
Yeah, great points. A couple of things for me come to mind as well. I really encourage companies to nail their top-down rewards and recognition program and nail their milestone program before they expand out to, let's say, like a peer-to-peer program. And so there can be a little bit of self-reflection that goes into that, right? So with regards to our milestone anniversary reward program, like if I had to rate ourselves on a scale of 1 to 10, how well is that program being received? Are we missing anniversaries? Do people appreciate the reward, or is it a plaque that's collecting dust? Is it easy to execute? Because if it's not being well received, if you're missing anniversaries, if people are getting rewards that aren't really being appreciated, I think you got to nail that one first before you move on and scale up.
Yeah.
And then similarly, I'd say, something for top-down recognition, like scale 1 to 10, how consistent are our managers at recognizing their direct reports for the things that matter to us? And if the question is like, not very good, 5, 6, you probably need to still focus there and get that number up before you think about moving on. And if you don't know the number because you don't have any data, that's a good indicator that you need to think about how to improve that program or work with a tool that will help you capture that data so you understand where you are in your recognition journey and whether managers are being consistent. So just some food for thought. Definitely my suggestion, nail those 2 programs before you go any bigger.
Correct. And for me, I just want to add, before you jump into another program, you might want to think about adding more budget to your current program. Totally. Like, have you really gotten, is it really working well? To maybe more fuel on the fire is more what you need instead of another fire, right?
And that's a whole other conversation, right? Like we see, sometimes we see companies that want to run a lot of programs, but they try and spread a small budget, too thin across those too many programs. So it's really, really hard to do a good job. So rather than do that, run fewer programs with bigger budgets and really, really see success with those fewer programs.
Totally.
Okay. This one's in from Tammy Quasey. So if you're looking to start small, then scale up, what should you look for in a recognition software program to help you do that?
So I'd look for a software that has the ability to grow with the programs. The last thing I want to do is have success with everyone. The team is getting on my program, using the tool, being happy, and then being like, okay, well, we outgrew this really quickly. We have to go put in a new program and start all that over again. So I want to make sure the tool has the ability to grow for at least the foreseeable future with the team that we have now. I still want to see flexible rewards. I think that is important no matter what size of program you launch. I think people will get turned away from your program quickly or not like it if the rewards are bad. I'd want the ability for the tool to be simple. I like, for me, this is the biggest one. I like, if you can make it simple, no matter what size the program is, I'd want it to be simple so that people can get in, do recognition, then go back out selling, marketing, operations, whatever they've got to do. So that'd be important for me. And the last one, I want to make sure that they have the platform is inclusive. You can use the platform wherever you need to across the business. So if it's mobile, because I've got people out who are out in the field, or if it's at a desktop, or if it's offline, because you got people who just don't have access to a computer. I want to make sure that they have access, and the program is inclusive for the program that we're trying to run.
Yeah, I think you make a good point there around inclusivity, right? We see that a lot with companies that have struggled with recognition because they're using a tool or a platform that requires their employees to be sitting at a computer all day. It's kind of like, well, that's not how we operate. So, to piggyback on that as well, a few things come to mind, Quace, because especially depending on where a company is in their recognition journey, I know I'm using that one a few times today. You really should only be paying for people who can give recognition. Again, thinking crawl, walk, run, starting small. You might be running a milestone anniversary award program. You might be running a top-down program. You really should only be paying for those people who can give recognition, and an unlimited number of people should be able to receive recognition. That's how you start to sort of like build momentum in the program and in a cost-effective way so that you can sort of build up to bigger programs like peer-to-peer. The other thing is that rewards shouldn't be marked up, right? Like people shop online. People know what things cost. And so if you are offering a rewards catalog that's limited and someone can like pick a duffel bag that costs $100 in the catalog, but out in the world, they know that only costs, $50, $60, that doesn't really feel good. So those rewards shouldn't be marked up. There shouldn't be like these exorbitant shipping fees. There's also scenarios where an employee may never like claim their reward. The company shouldn't really have to pay for that. And there are ways to do that with your software service provider. So make sure to do your research and just some of the things that come to mind. And one other thing is that you really shouldn't have to have a company email address to take part in a recognition program, right? We see this a lot. There, especially in frontline industry where people are out in the field, they may not get a company email, but like we need to make sure that they're being recognized. So that's sort of like something to think about, especially if you're in the frontline industry.
That last one's really important. I think it's easy to think about the desk workers, like the people who are at a desks, and from my experience, some of those are the high tech companies, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of employees who actually need the recognition and where it's most valued are those people who are on hospital floor or who are on the line working on making something happen, versus the I don't pick on anybody, but let's pick on the head of rewards that's sitting at a computer. Let's pick on that person as opposed to someone else. But I think it's really important to understand where this is going to have impact and where you're going to focus in your program.
Totally. Great point. Okay, so let's kind of like do a bit of a wrap up here. I'm keeping an eye on the clock. So what happens, Quace, if the initial program doesn't actually get results that you want? Like any tips for regrouping on that? Like where would you go from there?
Usually, so for me, I'd look at the sort of three areas that probably went wrong. One, the design, something was off in the design. Two, we didn't help the managers get the adoption up right, and we didn't get that part correct and support them enough through it. Or three, the provider we're working with, people don't want to use the platform, it's too difficult, didn't have the right rewards. And I would adjust, like unashamed, adjust whatever it is that needs to be adjusted, and then go back at it. I would do so quickly. I wouldn't let the program fester for long in terms of it not working, because that just that does the wrong result for fixing your programs. I would often result for me, you'll see the budgets are too low and we've done too much. So that's like number two. Other than managers not adopting, the second one is often budgets are just too low, or we're doing too much with that smaller budget. And the last one for me to ask managers why it didn't work. Like just ask them, survey them, touch it, like ask. But I think you, for me, if you think you've gone too big and it's not working, regroup quickly. Don't waste time.
Yeah. I'd say all those resonate with me. For me, a company may have gone too big too soon, right? And so kind of like going back and evaluating whether you nailed those other two programs, milestone anniversary award programs and top-down recognition, before going bigger. And if you have not, it's okay to scale back and go back and fix those two programs before you kind of like move forward again. Yeah. That's my 2 cents.
Love it.
Look at us, just past the half hour here, Quay. So that's a wrap. Any key takeaways from the conversation that you want to kind of like leave with the crew here?
Big one, nail your top-down program, nail your mindset program. I think we talked about that. Nail those programs if you can nail them. The second one for me would be really, really focus your budgets, which are usually the limiting function in these programs, and why we're starting small, etc. Please don't stretch them. Do what you can with the budget, and that's going to be that you're achieving results with, and then ask for more budget. Don't try to do, I've seen some programs where they're giving managers $5, $10 a month for their 10 employees, and it's just not going to work. I'll tell you that right now. I can bet on it. Really do what you can with the budget that makes sense, and then grow it from there.
Cool. The other thing that jumped out to me is if you are at the starting point of your recognition journey and you have to pick one program over the other, one program being milestone anniversary awards versus top-down manager recognition programs, if you can choose, go with those top-down manager recognition programs. It's way more impactful, highest leverage. Again, people don't leave anniversary award programs, they leave managers. It's not to say that running a great anniversary program is not important. It is, but if you can nail that top-down program, you're well on your way to building a great culture. So that would be my key takeaway. Cool. Great chat, Quay. It's always fun. And for anyone who enjoyed the content, you can also head over to our YouTube channel. We've got lots of great culture building tips. And for that, we thank you for joining us and see you next time.
Thanks so much, everyone. And thanks, Joe.